Okay, get ready to dive deep today
Oh,
because we're tackling the world of novel formulations in psychedelic science.
exciting stuff.
It's like, we're going behind the curtain with the scientists
Yeah.
who are basically perfecting these psychedelic recipes
Mm-hmm.
to make them safer and more effective for treating, well, a bunch of different
A
conditions.
bunch.
So you've given us a mountain of research articles, clinical trial
A
data,
lot to dig into.
even a lecture from the Stanford Psychedelic Science Group.
Great stuff.
All right, let's jump in.
Yeah, it's a really exciting area of research.
Oh,
I
totally.
think it shows just how much potential these compounds have
Mm-hmm.
and how, maybe we can harness that power in much more precise and targeted ways.
One thing that really stuck out to me
Yeah.
from all of this material
Mm-hmm.
is that even with all this cutting-edge science talk,
Right.
setting is still so important.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in that Borkel study, the 2024 one,
Yeah.
they found that people who used psychedelics in like really supportive environments
Right.
and with positive intentions, they had way better outcomes.
Huge difference.
It makes you think, like, even if we could engineer the perfect molecule, can we ever really, truly control that subjective experience?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it shows that psychedelics work on this like really deep psychological level
Yeah.
and that the context of the experience matters a lot.
So true. It's like,
Yeah.
you're working with this powerful force of nature
Yeah.
and you're trying to, like, channel it in the right direction.
Channel it. Exactly.
And speaking of channeling things, one of the things that caught my eye
Mm-hmm.
is the development of these prodrugs.
Pro-drugs.
Prodrugs.
They're like, stealth bombers of the psychedelic world.
Okay.
They're designed to kind of sneak past all the unwanted side effects
Right.
and deliver that therapeutic payload right where it's needed.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't chemists, can you break down exactly how these prodrugs do their magic?
So imagine a pill
Okay.
that only like activates when it gets to a very specific part of your body.
Okay.
Like say the brain.
Interesting.
That's essentially what a prodrug does.
Mm,
It's designed to be inactive
right.
until it bumps into a specific enzyme or goes through a specific metabolic process.
Okay.
And then that transforms it into the active psychedelic compound.
I see.
So this whole targeted approach, I think, could be a real game changer,
Yeah.
especially for people who are, hesitant about those intense psychedelic effects.
Yeah, it's like you're avoiding hitting those off-target areas
Precisely.
that could cause unwanted side effects.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And this level of precision is super important when we're talking about these therapeutic applications.
Makes sense.
We want to, maximize the benefits.
Of course.
While minimizing the risks.
Totally. It's like we're moving from a shotgun approach
Right.
to a scalpel approach.
Right. Exactly. And it's not just about where the drug goes.
Right
It's
on.
also about like fine-tuning its effects once it gets there.
Okay.
Which brings us to non-hallucinogenic analogs.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about those.
So these are compounds that are, chemically pretty similar to classic psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
but they're designed to keep the therapeutic benefits
Okay.
without causing that like full-blown psychedelic experience.
So you're saying we could treat things like anxiety
Exactly.
or depression
Yeah,
without those intense visuals or altered perceptions.
that's the idea. Because for some people,
Right.
the full psychedelic experience can be just too much.
Yeah.
Or even, maybe not safe for their condition.
Right.
So non-hallucinogenic analogs offer a way to like access the therapeutic potential
I see.
in a more manageable way.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like separating the medicine from the mystical.
Right.
And it's fascinating to think about, the potential applications for people who might not have even considered psychedelic therapy before.
Totally. It all comes back to this intricate dance, right?
Mm-mm.
Between these compounds and the receptors in our brains.
Right.
And I think we have to talk about the serotonin 2A receptor.
The infamous 5-HT2A.
Yeah, it seems like that's where a lot of the psychedelic action happens.
It's definitely a key player. The 5-HT2A receptor.
Yeah.
It's like the lock that a lot of these psychedelics fit into.
Right.
And
right.
how they, interact with that lock has a huge impact on the overall experience.
I see.
And that's why scientists are designing these molecules
Yeah.
that can like fine-tune that interaction.
So it's not just about activating the receptor, but activating it in a specific way.
You got it. Think of it like playing a musical instrument.
Okay.
You can hit the same note, right?
Yeah.
But the way you hit it, how hard you press, the subtle changes in your technique, that all affects the sound that comes out.
I like that analogy.
It's the same with these psychedelic formulations. Scientists are basically composing a symphony of brain activity.
Wow.
By, carefully orchestrating how the molecule interacts with the 5-HT2A receptor.
That's really amazing. And this is where the idea of selectivity comes in, right?
Exactly. These new formulations, they're designed to be very selective, meaning they target that 5-HT2A receptor with laser focus.
Right.
And avoid those off-target receptors that could cause problems.
Like minimizing the collateral damage?
Exactly. We want to hit the target and nothing else.
Makes perfect sense. I remember reading about some formulations that have this 5-HT2A antagonist core built in.
Oh, interesting.
It's like having an emergency brake right there in the molecule.
Got it. If things start to get too intense,
right,
you can basically shut the whole thing down.
Wow.
By blocking that 5-HT2A receptor.
That's incredible. It's like a safety net for the whole psychedelic journey.
Exactly.
Now, I am curious about the challenges of getting the dosage right. Yeah. Seems like finding that sweet spot is really critical.
It is, especially with something like MDMA.
Yeah.
MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies.
Right.
They've done such groundbreaking work with MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. And their research really shows just how crucial it is to get the dosage right.
Too little, and you might miss out on the benefits.
Exactly.
Too much, and you risk those side effects. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is a delicate balance, and that's where, these innovations like titratable dosage forms come in.
Okay.
They let you have really precise control over how much MDMA is given.
Oh, that makes sense.
Allowing therapists to really fine-tune the experience for each person.
So it's like a dimmer switch for the intensity of the therapy.
I like that, yeah. A dimmer switch. It allows for a more personalized approach and potentially a safer one.
So we're seeing real progress in how these powerful substances are delivered.
Yeah.
And it's not just about pills anymore, right? There are all these new delivery methods being explored.
That's right. Things like sublingual formulations, like dissolving tablets under the tongue,
right,
and transdermal patches.
Okay.
It's an explosion of creativity.
Yeah.
All focused on, how to maximize the therapeutic potential.
Yeah.
And minimize the risks.
It really does feel like we're in the middle of a psychedelic renaissance.
It does. It's an exciting time. And these innovations just keep coming.
It's incredible.
It's a real paradigm shift in how we think about psychedelic medicine. It's not just about the trip anymore.
Yeah.
It's about harnessing the power of these molecules.
Right.
But doing it safely.
Yeah.
And in a controlled way.
That's what's so fascinating about these novel formulations.
Absolutely.
They're pushing the boundaries, but safety and efficacy are always front and center.
That's the key.
It's incredible to see the dedication of these researchers.
Oh, yeah. They're really leading the way.
They really are. But, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Maybe we should pause here.
Yeah, good idea.
And come back to this conversation with fresh minds.
Sounds good to me. This world of novel formulations is vast.
Oh, yeah.
We've only just scratched the surface. It's kind of wild to think about how these new formulations are making us rethink things about psychedelics.
Like what kind of assumptions are we talking about?
Well, traditionally the focus has always been on the trip, right?
Yeah, the intense subjective experience, hallucinations, altered states, all that.
Right, exactly. But these new formulations are suggesting that maybe the therapeutic potential is somewhere else. It might not be about the trip itself.
Interesting.
But more about those subtle shifts in brain activity and, neuroplasticity that psychedelics can create.
So it's like we're separating the medicine from the mystical experience.
Yeah, in a way. Of course, the subjective experience is still really important in psychedelic therapy.
Right.
But these innovations give us more precision, more control.
And that could open things up for treating, a wider range of conditions. It's not just mental health anymore, right?
Right, exactly. We might even see psychedelics used for things you wouldn't traditionally think of.
Like
chronic pain, maybe, or even autoimmune disorders.
Wow, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about those applications. It really expands the potential.
It does. And as we learn more about the molecular mechanisms at play, we're getting a much more nuanced understanding of how these substances actually interact with the brain.
It's like we're starting to decipher the language of the psychedelic experience.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And maybe, just maybe, with that knowledge, we can start writing our own messages.
Exactly. And fine-tune those messages for maximum therapeutic benefit. We talked about the 5-HT2A receptor before.
Right, the serotonin receptor.
But there's actually a whole symphony of receptors involved in that psychedelic experience.
So it's not just a serotonin story. What other receptors are we talking about?
Well, scientists are looking at other serotonin receptors like the 5-HT1A and 5-HT2C.
Okay.
But also receptors for other neurotransmitters like dopamine and glutamate.
Okay, so now we're getting into some serious brain chemistry.
A little bit.
Can you remind me what those other neurotransmitters do again? Like dopamine, glutamate.
Sure. So dopamine is often associated with reward and motivation.
Okay.
It's thought to be involved in those euphoric and pro-social effects you see with some psychedelics.
That makes sense. It's that feeling of connection and openness people talk about. What about glutamate?
Glutamate is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. It's involved in learning and memory.
Oh, right.
The thinking is that psychedelics might actually boost neuroplasticity by changing glutamate signaling.
So you're talking about like rewiring the brain for positive change.
That's the hope. And by targeting all these different receptor systems, you can potentially fine-tune those therapeutic effects even more.
Wow. It's like we're conducting an orchestra of brain activity.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It sounds like there's still a lot we don't know, though.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more to discover, but that's what makes this field so exciting.
Yeah.
We're on the verge of some major breakthroughs in our understanding of the brain and the potential of psychedelics to heal.
It's like we're explorers, charting a new frontier.
Exactly.
And each new discovery brings us closer to unlocking the full potential of these incredible substances.
It really does. And with that comes a responsibility, of course, to use this knowledge wisely, ethically.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
As this research moves forward, we need to make sure we're not just focusing on the science,
Right.
but also thinking about the ethical implications.
Absolutely. It's about finding the right balance between pushing the boundaries of what's possible scientifically and making sure that these treatments are used responsibly and for everyone's benefit.
And speaking of responsibility, I'm curious about how we ensure equitable access.
That's a big one.
Because psychedelic therapy can be, well, expensive.
Yeah.
And time-consuming.
It can be.
And we need to make sure it's not just a luxury for, the privileged few.
You're absolutely right. Access and affordability are key as psychedelic medicine becomes more mainstream. We need to find ways to make these treatments available to everyone who could benefit.
Yeah.
Regardless of their income, their background,
Absolutely. And what about the potential for misuse or exploitation?
Yeah, that's another important consideration. Psychedelics are powerful substances. We need to make sure they're used ethically.
So informed consent is crucial.
Absolutely. People need to be fully informed about the risks and the potential benefits before they decide to participate in anything. It's about empowering people to make informed choices about their mental health.
That's so important. This whole deep dive has really been eye-opening. It's amazing to see how science is pushing the boundaries in mental health care.
It is.
And how these novel formulations are like opening the door for so many new treatment options.
It's an exciting time to be in this field, that's for sure.
It is. And it's inspiring to see the dedication, the passion of the researchers, the clinicians, the advocates who are like really driving this psychedelic renaissance.
They're doing incredible work.
They are. So if you had to look into your crystal ball,
my crystal ball.
Where do you see all of this heading? What does the future of psychedelic medicine look like to you?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, I think we're moving towards a more personalized approach to mental health, one that recognizes the connection between mind, body, and spirit.
And psychedelics could play a key role in that shift.
I think they could. They offer this powerful tool for exploring human consciousness, for facilitating healing, transformation. But it's important to remember that they're not a magic bullet.
Right. They're not a quick fix.
Exactly. Psychedelics are most effective when they're used responsibly, intentionally, in a supportive therapeutic environment.
This deep dive has really given us so much to think about.
It has.
It's clear that the future of psychedelic medicine is, it's full of promise, but also challenges.
It is. And it's up to all of us to have these conversations, to act responsibly, to make sure these powerful substances are used to benefit humanity.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that we all have a part to play in shaping the future of this field. It really does feel like we're at this turning point with psychedelic medicine. There's all this incredible scientific advancement. But we also need to make sure we're being careful.
Oh, absolutely.
Thoughtful, navigating these uncharted waters.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance between pushing the boundaries of what we know is possible and making sure that these powerful tools are being used responsibly.
It's interesting how the field is wrestling with these ethical questions.
Yeah.
Right now, in real time. I was reading about the debate over whether therapists should have personal experience with psychedelics.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough one.
It seems really complex.
It is. There are, valid points on both sides.
Yeah.
Some people think that firsthand experience helps therapists understand their patients better.
Right.
Support them better.
Makes sense.
But others worry about potential biases or, therapists maybe projecting their own experiences onto their patients.
Yeah. That's a real concern. It seems like there's no easy answer.
There really isn't.
And the field is still trying to figure out the best practices.
Absolutely.
For training, ethical conduct.
We're in this period of, exploration, discovery, and that includes figuring out how to handle these ethical challenges in a way that puts the patient's well-being first.
And that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
It is.
Putting the well-being of the patient first.
Absolutely. That should be the guiding principle of all ethical psychedelic research and therapy.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's just incredible to see how science is pushing the boundaries, in mental health care, and how these novel formulations are creating new treatment options.
It's inspiring to see all the work that's being done.
It really is. So if you had to gaze into your crystal ball, what do you see? What does the future of psychedelic medicine look like to you?
Well, I think we're moving towards a more personalized approach to mental health. One that really sees the connection between mind, body, and spirit.
And psychedelics could be a part of that shift.
I think they could be. They offer this powerful way to explore human consciousness, to facilitate healing, real transformation. But, it's important to remember they're not a magic bullet.
Right, not a quick fix.
Exactly. Psychedelics work best when they're used responsibly, with intention.
Right.
In the right setting, with a therapist.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
It's clear that the future of psychedelic medicine, well, it's full of promise, but also challenges.
Absolutely. It's up to all of us to keep having these conversations, to make sure these substances are used for good.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
That we all have a role to play in shaping the future of this field.
We do.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Could these advancements, the formulations, our understanding of the brain, could all of this lead to a future where psychedelics are just part of mainstream healthcare? Not just for mental health, but for other things too.
This is a big question.
Yeah, it is.
But it feels more and more relevant as we go down this road. It's a really interesting question, and one we need to think carefully about.
Yeah.
As we've seen with other powerful medications, there's potential for both good and bad. But if we're careful, if we make ethical choices, and if we really focus on the well-being of people, of society, it could be a future worth fighting for.
This has been an incredible journey into the world of novel psychedelic formulations. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.